You missed a spot. My sister's foot slammed into my knuckles, kicking the steamer out of my hand. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look down. She just smoothed her silk skirt and sighed. Honestly, Diana, she said, checking her reflection in the mirror. If you can't even handle a steamer, why are you here? From across the room, my mother didn't ask if I was hurt. She just narrowed her eyes. Be careful with that fabric, she snapped. It costs more than your car. I looked down at my wrist. Hidden beneath the sleeve of my modest blouse was a Patek Philippe watch worth $50,000. I checked the time. 4:12 p.m. The mercy period had just expired. Before I tell you what I did with the steamer, drop a comment. What's the most disrespectful thing a family member has ever said to you? I'm reading everything tonight. I stood up, brushing imaginary dust from my skirt. I didn't look at Brittany. I didn't look at my mother. I just walked out of the suite and into the hallway, the sound of their complaints fading behind me. I leaned against the wall and took a deep breath. My name is Diana, and I'm 27 years old. To my family, I'm the struggling assistant, the one who didn't make it, the one who needs their charity to survive. To the rest of the world, I'm the fixer. I run a crisis management firm that handles scandals for billionaires, politicians, and celebrities. My base salary is $850,000 a year, not including success bonuses that often double that amount. I own a $2.8 million home in a gated community that my parents don't know exists. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from a client in London. A text from my assistant confirming the wire transfer for a settlement I'd negotiated that morning. I looked back at the door to the bridal suite. 10 years ago, when I was 17, my father sat me down and explained that they couldn't afford to send me to the private university I'd been accepted to. He said they had to save for Brittany's future because she needed more help. I accepted it. I went to a state school on a scholarship and worked 2 jobs. 3 years ago, when my parents were facing foreclosure on their home, I secretly bought the note from the bank through a shell company. I became their lender so they wouldn't lose the roof over their heads. I never told them. I let them believe the bank had made a clerical error in their favor. That was the trap. I had spent my entire life believing that if I was useful enough, if I solved enough problems, if I stayed quiet enough, they would eventually love me. It's a common delusion among children who grow up in homes where affection is transactional. You convince yourself that your value lies in your utility. You become a tool, an object, a servant. Because objects don't get abandoned. But today, listening to my mother criticize my steaming technique while my sister kicked me, something snapped. I realized I wasn't waiting for them to love me. I was waiting for permission to stop trying. I looked at the time again. The rehearsal dinner started in 45 minutes. I could leave now. I could get in my car and never look back. But I needed one last thing. Brittany's phone was sitting on the vanity in the suite, unlocked. It contained the emails proving she had been leaking stories about my clients to the press stories I had then been hired to fix. She was the leak. She was the reason my last 3 months had been a living hell. I took a breath, smoothed my blouse, and walked back into the room. Sorry, I said, keeping my voice meek. I just needed some air. I'll finish the dress. My mother didn't even look up. Hurry up, Diana. We don't have all day. I knelt down, picked up the steamer, and smiled. They thought I was submitting. They didn't know I was just reloading. The yacht club dining room was a masterclass in exclusion. White linens, gold-rimmed plates, and a seating chart designed with surgical precision to put me in my place. My parents and Brittany sat at the head table, flanked by the groom's ultra-wealthy family, the Sterlings. The bridesmaids were at table 2. The groomsmen at table 3. I found my name card at table 19. It was tucked in the back corner, directly next to the swinging doors of the kitchen. Every time a waiter entered, a blast of hot, garlic-scented air hit me in the face. My dinner companions were the groom's teenage cousins and a deaf aunt who kept asking me if I was the nanny. I sat down, smoothing the napkin over my lap. The waiter poured me a glass of tap water while the head table popped bottles of Dom Perignon. I watched my mother laugh at something Mrs. Sterling said, her hand resting possessively on Brittany's arm. They looked like a tableau of success. They had no idea who paid for it. When the bill for this exclusive venue buyout had come due last week, my father's credit card had been declined. The event coordinator had called me, frantic. I had wired the $50,000 anonymously, under the guise of a banking error correction. My team had fabricated. I was paying to be humiliated. My father, Richard, stood up, tapping a silver knife against his crystal flute. The room hushed. He adjusted his silk tie, looking every inch the proud patriarch. When Susan and I raised our girls, he began, his voice booming with performative warmth. We taught them that excellence was the only option. And tonight, looking at Brittany, I know we succeeded. He raised his glass to the groom, Arthur Sterling's son. Brittany didn't just find a husband. She found a future. She secured a legacy. She is the shining star of this family, and we couldn't be prouder. Applause rippled through the room. Brittany beamed, fake tears shimmering in her eyes. Then, Richard's gaze drifted to the back of the room, to table 19. "And we have Diana," he said, his tone shifting to a patronizing chuckle. "Our little free spirit. She's still finding herself. Maybe one day, she'll catch a big fish like Brittany did. But until then, we love her anyway, don't we?" The room erupted in polite, pitying laughter. Heads turned to look at me. I saw the smirks. I saw the judgment. The failure. The charity case. My mother blew me a kiss. A gesture so condescending it felt like a slap. I didn't look away. I didn't smile. I didn't shrink. I picked up my phone. Under the table, I opened the secure messaging app I used with my team. I typed 3 words. Initiate phase 2. They thought this was a toast. They didn't realize it was a countdown. The double doors swung open with a force that rattled the nearest glassware. The room didn't just go quiet. It froze. Uncle Marcus stood in the archway. In a room full of rented tuxedos and off-the-rack suits, he looked like an apex predator in bespoke Italian wool. He didn't wait to be seated. He didn't check in with the hostess. He scanned the room, his eyes passing over the head table, over my father's waving hand, over my mother's hopeful smile without a flicker of recognition. He started walking. He moved with the kind of aggression that parts crowds. He walked straight past the groom's wealthy parents. He walked past the bridesmaids. He walked past the open bar. He stopped at table 19. He pulled out the empty chair next to me, scraping the legs loudly against the floor, and sat down. He ignored the teenage cousins. He ignored the deaf aunt. He looked directly at me. "Tokyo is stalling," he said, his voice carrying in the silent room. "The merger is bleeding out, Diana. The senator says he won't sign off unless you broker the terms personally." I took a sip of my water. "Tell the senator if he wants me to broker the terms. He needs to stop hiding assets in the Caymans." I told him that yesterday. Marcus let out a bark of laughter. "I told him you'd say that. He's terrified of you." A shadow fell over the table. My father had rushed over, his smile strained, a vein pulsing in his forehead. "Marcus," he said, a little too loud. "You must be confused. You're at the head table with us. Come on. Don't bother Diana with business talk. You know it goes right over her head." My mother appeared beside him, nodding frantically. "Yes, Marcus. Diana is, well, she's in a transition period. Let's not bore her with things she doesn't understand." Marcus slowly turned his head. He looked at my father, then at my mother, with the kind of amusement a wolf might show a rabbit. "Bore her?" Marcus repeated. "Richard, your daughter isn't bored. She's the only person in this room who understands why your credit card was declined last week." My father's face went gray. That was a banking error. It was a liquidity crisis," Marcus corrected coldly. "And if Diana hadn't quietly wired $50,000 to the venue, we'd all be eating hot dogs in the parking lot right now." Gasps rippled through the nearby tables. Brittany stood up at the head table, her face a mask of shock. "That's a lie," my mother hissed. "Diana doesn't have that kind of money. She's an assistant." Marcus didn't argue. He didn't even look at her. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick, black dossier. He slid it across the tablecloth to me. It hit the wood with a heavy thud. "The groom's father," Marcus said to me, ignoring my parents completely. "The Sterling portfolio. You were right about the offshore accounts. It's all here. The SEC is raiding them on Monday morning." I placed my hand on the file. It felt cold. It felt heavy. It felt like a weapon. "Monday?" I asked. "Unless you stop it," Marcus said. My father looked at the file, then at me. For the first time in his life, I saw genuine fear in his eyes. He didn't understand the game, but he suddenly realized he wasn't the one playing it. "Diana?" he whispered. "What is going on?" I picked up the file. "Business, Dad," I said. "Things I don't understand. Remember? Arthur Sterling didn't walk across the room. He ran. The groom's father. A man worth $400 million. A man my parents had spent the last 6 months trying desperately to impress. Shoved past a waiter with a tray of salmon tartare. His face was a sheet of pale, sweaty panic. He wasn't looking at the bride. He wasn't looking at my parents. He was staring directly at the black dossier sitting next to my water glass. "Diana," he breathed, reaching the table. He gripped the back of my chair so hard his knuckles turned white. "Marcus told me. Is it true? Is the SEC actually moving on Monday?" I didn't stand up. I didn't smile. I just rested my hand on the leather cover of the file. "They aren't just moving, Arthur," I said softly. "They have the emails. All of them. Even the ones you thought you deleted from the encrypted server. Arthur made a sound like a wounded animal. My father, sensing the attention of the room but completely misreading the situation, stood up. He smoothed his jacket, putting on his best host smile. Arthur, please, Richard said, stepping between us. I apologize for my daughter. She's had a bit too much to drink. She doesn't know what she's talking about. Diana? Give Mr. Sterling his papers and go wait in the car. He reached for the dossier. Arthur Sterling slapped my father's hand away. It was a sharp, violent crack that echoed through the silent dining room. Don't you touch that. Arthur snarled at my father. Then he turned back to me, his eyes pleading. Diana, please. I know you handled the senator's leak. I know what you did for the tech merger in Silicon Valley. You're the only one who can kill this story before the market opens. My mother gasped. Her? Arthur, you must be mistaken. Diana is an assistant. She steams dresses. Arthur looked at my mother, then at me, confusion warring with desperation. Assistant? He asked. She's the most expensive crisis manager in North America. She charges $10,000 an hour. The silence that fell over the table was heavy, suffocating, and delicious. My mother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Brittany looked from Arthur to me, her face crumbling as she realized her wedding, her perfect, expensive day, had just become a sidebar to my career. I need you, Arthur said, his voice trembling. Name your price, whatever it is, double it. Just make it go away. I picked up my glass of wine. It was a cheap house red, bitter on the tongue, but in that moment, it tasted like nectar. My rates haven't doubled, Arthur, I said, looking him dead in the eye. They've tripled. Fine, he said instantly. Tripled. Done. Just fix it. I took a slow sip. I let the silence stretch until it was almost unbearable. I looked at my father, who was staring at me with a mixture of horror and greed. I looked at my mother, who was looking at my designer watch as if seeing it for the first time. I can't do that, I said. Why? Arthur begged. Money isn't an issue. It's not about the money, I said coldly. I gestured to my parents, to Brittany, to the table by the kitchen door where they had seated me. I have a strict policy, Arthur. I don't work for the friends of people who disrespect me. Arthur froze. He looked at my parents. He looked at the seating chart. He looked at the way my mother was looking at me, not with love, but with calculation. The realization hit him. He wasn't losing his company because of the SEC. He was losing his company because he had aligned himself with people who treated the solution to his problems like garbage. You fools, Arthur hissed. Do you have any idea what you've done? My dad sputtered. Arthur, we didn't know. You didn't know your own daughter? I pushed the dossier toward him. Good luck Monday, I said, standing. He fled. My family froze, realizing their entire world had just collapsed. Brittany finally found her voice. You ruined everything, she whispered. No, I answered. I just declined a job. She shrieked about money, power, status. I stayed calm. He needs someone like me. But I have standards. My father tried to command me back into place. To beg, apologize, obey. I saw him clearly for the first time, not a king. Just a broke man in a rented tuxedo. No, I said. I resign. I listed every unpaid role. I'd been expected to fill steaming dresses, wrangling VIP cars, fixing crises, staying out of photos. Brittany raged that I owed her as the unofficial maid of honor. No, I said. My duty was to family. And you forfeited that. I signaled Henry. The music dropped. Lights rose. Bars closed. What are you doing? My mother gasped. I paid for this party, I said. And I just canceled the check. My father exploded. You're ruining this family. It's not about money, I called back. It's about respect. And you can't afford that either. I walked out lighter, freer until a hand slammed my car door shut. My father, desperate, cornered. You're not going anywhere. Everything you have belongs to me, he snarled. He demanded my keys, cards, equity claiming a decade-old investment. Delusion. Entitlement. The narcissist's last weapon. So I gave him the truth. I handed him a blue folder. The house he lived in? I owned the note. I had bought the mortgage years ago. You threatened your lender, I said quietly. Loan acceleration clause. You now owe $480,000. 30 days. Or I foreclose. His face drained. He collapsed. You can't do this. I'm your father. No, I said. You're a bad investment. I drove away. 40 minutes later, behind my estate gates, I opened a bottle of wine worth more than the wedding dress I'd abandoned. I blocked all of them. The quiet wasn't lonely. It was sovereignty. If you've ever had to buy your freedom from the people who should have protected you, tell me, what was the moment you finally walked away?